Daniel Cormier weighed in, and all he had to say about Jon Jones is the guy doesn't hit very hard. Now, before you think that's sour grapes, or you think that that was Daniel trying to be negative, not at all. You'd be misconstrued. That was one statement, but in the larger scheme, Daniel said, "Oh man, this guy does everything great." So his elbows actually hurt really bad. His kicks hurt really bad. His knees hurt really bad, but the punches don't hurt. There's not a lot of power. There's not a lot of thudding power. He uses those hands, in my experience, Daniel talking, to then set up the other strikes. Okay. I bring this to you guys because this is an interesting match. It really is an interesting match. I mean, how we even got here is interesting. How we decided a guy who's never been in the division, hasn't done anything for 3 years, is our number one contender. In all fairness, but that's interesting. How we decided that his opponent is a guy that's 1-1 in his last two. I'm sharing for you that's interesting, but I don't say that it's wrong. No other heavyweight says that it's wrong. No other heavyweight has raised their hand or raised their voice to say that match should not be taking place. It shouldn't be a main event, or it shouldn't be for our world title. So I most certainly am not either. I just share for you it's an interesting match. How is Jon going to beat him? It would seem like if Jon's going to go and take him down. Now, I will tell you, here's the one problem. You've heard many fighters say the last thing to go is our power. Now, I feel as though I could digress and talk about that at great length. I don't personally think that that's true. I don't think that's ever been true. I don't think that we have any evidence of that. I think it's something that an old aging fighter who's got nothing else, he's even got a bad hip, just wants the world to say when they say, "Oh, hey, careful, you took out that power." I don't think it's true. But I will acknowledge that is a narrative and a phenomenon that is out there. Whether it's accurate or not, I will show you the other side of the coin, and I will maintain it is absolutely true. If that's the last thing to go is your power, the very first thing to go is your wrestling. The first thing that you will not be able to do in combat if you are not sharp, if you are not practicing it, if you are not active, if you are not competing, the very first thing you will lose the ability to do is to take the other guy down. And it's a really big deal in this match. I do accept unworldly physical prowess from Jon Jones. I accept it. He's got it. But there's a human being in there somewhere. And there's a tipping point at some point. We just don't know where it is, and we don't know if it's already come. So just in the world of realisticness, we can expect Jon's takedown to be less than what it was. And Jon's takedown over the years is one thing that started to get rusty. When Jon was losing the fight to Dominic Reyes, when he knew mathematically he was behind, when he had a sense of urgency, and Jon's got a big heart, boy, he hangs on to that belt. I will give that to him. He's got grit. But when he saw his back up against the wall, he did not turn to the takedown. It was not as though the takedown failed him. He didn't even attempt the takedown. He knew it's not there. If you back up in the Santos fight, when Jon's back was against the wall, when he knew the fight wasn't going the way that he wanted and he had a sense of urgency, he did not get the takedown, but he didn't even attempt it. His takedown had gotten so rusty that he was aware of it, and he was aware enough to it that when he had an urgency, he didn't even waste any energy acting as though he was going to do it. I think that's a very important observation that I'm making. In fact, I think of all the analysts that you've heard speaking about this fight, what I just said right there is the single most important thing you're going to hear. It's very important because I'm not taking an ability away from Jon. I'm taking one tactic away, and I'm offering you evidence as proof that that weapon is not sharp and it's not usable. So if you have a national champion in Jon, taking a guy that's never had a wrestling match in Surreal, but then you go and you look at their last fights and you realize Surreal's not very good at stopping takedowns, but boy, Jon isn't offering very many anymore. It will lead you to then ask yourself, how could they do on their feet? If this was just a stand-up fight, how would they do on their feet? I don't think of Jon Jones as a kickboxer. When I talk about Jon behind his back, I refer to him as a trick boxer. Jon is so dynamic. He will make you guess at such incredible lengths. He will show you his foot to hit you with his elbow. He will look like he's reaching for your leg, and he'll spin and hit you with his elbow. It's unbelievable. He will switch from orthodox to southpaw, and he doesn't have to do a lot of the head movement. He doesn't have to. He's so far back, he can just hold his hand up like a cartoon. They do this in cartoons where the big brother will hold his hand up and the little brother, he's getting a head full of steam and the dust is coming, but he can't gain any ground because big brother's arm's too long. Jon will actually do that. When Jon wants distance, he'll just put his hands straight. So it's an incredible thing. You don't watch him, right? Mike Tyson doesn't watch him and see what he's doing with the bobbing and weaving. Floyd Mayweather doesn't understand what he's doing with the pulse because he doesn't do them. He just puts his hand out. It's very different. But he has the longest reach in the UFC. He's the only guy that can do it. Therefore, he's the only guy that does do it. But it still begs the question, does he have the power and does he have the speed? Ciryl Gane for a heavyweight looks to be pretty quick to me. You want to know somebody's stand-up ability that I really respect? I respect to go, ooh, God, that's going to be painful for the other guy. Junior Dos Santos. Junior Dos Santos on his feet doesn't do a lot of kicks, doesn't do a lot of them. Boy, those hands, boy, that uppercut of Junior Dos Santos. It's as good a boxing as the heavyweight division has seen. I just go back, I was there live the night Ciryl and Junior fought. It was all a stand-up fight. It didn't last very long, and it didn't go Junior's way. Ciryl Gane is a very good, crafty guy on his feet. If he has a fear of the takedown, like he did against Francis Ngannou, it will slow him. Did he learn enough in that match with Francis Ngannou to understand that being scared of a takedown is going to paralyze your striking? Did he learn enough to do that, to not go out and repeat it? I don't know, guys. I don't know. I have never in my life picked against Jon Jones. And if I ever did publicly, like if you go, oh, Chael, I've heard you do it. If I ever did it publicly, it wasn't sincere. I don't think I've done it. I think I've only spoken sincere. But if you have a time where I picked against Jon Jones, I'll tell you right now, I didn't mean it. I didn't mean it. I didn't think anybody could beat him. I'm just fully aware that his takedown and his wrestling, as impressive as that is gone. I will remind you, it's been gone for a while, and his kickboxing has been so good that not only has he won championships and defended championships, he's even dealt with adversity and came back from defeat. So many people think Jon's greatest attribute is his wrestling. Well, in a couple of fights where he was back was against the wall and he had to turn to one tactic, he did not turn to wrestling. That's how good his kickboxing is. Is that good enough to deal with a guy who appears to be pretty fast and can move pretty well, who is a professional kickboxer at an elite level in Ciryl Gane? It's really what's on display. And one thing that we're not good at knowing is striking, guys. We like to pretend that we know, but we don't. We got reminded over the weekend in an embarrassing fashion how little we actually know about striking in the form of Jake Paul versus Tommy Fury. That's where we had to get reminded that we really don't know. Your biggest boxing fans never actually boxed. Your biggest boxing commentators never actually did it. They never actually went in the gym. They don't actually know what beat is, what rhythm is, what a 1-2 is, why a 3 is important, why you come with an uppercut. They don't actually know. They don't know where the liver is as opposed to the spleen. They don't actually know. They say it with confidence, and they talk about striking. They talk about that they knew, and their dad used to do it. Their granddad was in the Golden Gloves one time, but they don't actually know. Striking's a very complex thing. We don't see a whole lot of it. So when I watch Jon Jones, I watch one of the great trick boxers to ever do combat. When I look at Ciryl Gane and I realize that he had a professional kickboxing record of 27-2, which is a lot like Adesanya's, I say, okay, but is that a real sport? If your sport is real and you can stop the takedown, then you should beat Jon Jones. It's not complicated. But in all the years and in all the time and in all the matches, the credibility of boxing and the credibility of kickboxing remains unknown.